We are on the international agenda of the situation around Ukraine. From April 15 to 22 alone, more than 160 attacks were carried out in Kolivka, Donetsk, Avdiivka, and other settlements, resulting in 2 deaths and 20 injuries. On 20th April, a pregnant woman was fatally injured in shelling of the Novaya Tuvolzhanka settlement in Belgorod Oblast.
20 апреля при обстреле населенного пункта Новая Таволжанка Белгородской области смертельное ранение получила беременная женщина.
4 other civilians were injured. Nazis in Ukraine continue to terrorize employees of medical facility vehicles. On April 18th, the name was targeted by the HIMARS multiple rocket system of the blood transfusion rebels. There were people inside the station, and the city's second hospital was also attacked. 14 people were injured in Holivka, including a 5-year-old girl and 6 medical staff. The building was badly damaged. Naturally, no one in the Western media has noticed this. On 19th April in Kakhovka, the CU deliberately opened fire on an ambulance that had received a call from a shelling victim. The vehicle was also damaged. Bandera is actively using drones to hunt civilians. In a heinous incident on April 19th in the village of Ros, Belgorod Oblast, 2 local residents were burned alive in a private home after 2 explosive devices were dropped from a drone. It was the wife. She was too old to move because she had a broken femoral neck. On April 23rd, in the village of Shebekino, Belgorod Oblast, a woman and a man who provided care for her were injured by shrapnel in the chest and shoulder. The Ukrainian armed forces launched an attack on the same day due to a kamikaze drone attack. Taking advantage of this attack was carried out by using a drone on a civilian car. This resulted in 4 deaths. I repeat, the Western media not only turned a blind eye to these crimes, but also covered up the terrorist activities of the Kiev regime. They are propagating Ukrainian terrorism. On April 17th, the Washington Post published an interview with the boss. He told Ukrainian Defense Ministry General Directorate Budanov about preparations for a new attack by militants of the so-called Russian Volunteer Corps and a large-scale drone attack on Russian territory. Russian law enforcement agencies have carefully documented the crimes of Ukrainian neo-Nazis, and more than one atrocity by the Kiev regime has not been ignored. The persons involved were identified and brought to justice by the courts of the Russian Federation on the basis of evidence collected by the Russian Commission of Inquiry. They continue to sentence Ukrainian militants who committed serious crimes in DNR. The court sentenced 30. 4 members of the Ukrainian armed forces and 29 militants from the Nazi Azov formation were sentenced to long prison terms ranging from 25 years to life.
От 25 лет до пожизненного. Они были признаны виновными.
On April 22nd, we were talking about settlements in DR, where civilians were killed in shelling residential areas and civilian infrastructure was destroyed. No Ukrainian criminal can get away with it. They will respond to the full extent of the law on April 20th and 23. As you know, Congress has approved more than $60 billion in aid to the Kiev regime. This decision was preceded by a forced decision. Ukraine's Verkhovna Rada passed a scandalous law on strengthening mobilization on April 16th, namely. Is it? What is Zelensky? He reached almost every citizen of his country. In order to form another suicide battalion, he was later rewarded for it. From the United States of America. The Bankova regime sacrificed the lives of tens of 1,000 Ukrainians to obtain new weapons trenches. Moreover, the Kiev regime has deteriorated to such an extent.
деградировал уже настолько, что
In an interview with US television channel NBC7 on April 21st, Zelensky cynically quoted Ukraine directly as saying that he was really brave. According to Zelensky, he is sending his best sons and daughters to the front line. And from a point of view, it's straight, Zelensky's quote lowered prices across Europe. NATO. Zelensky now says the US military does not have to fight to defend NATO countries. Ukrainians do this, and the civilized world only provides weapons. End of quote. In other words, Zelensky is changing the lives of Ukrainian citizens.
То есть Зеленский меняет жизни граждан Украины на деньги
For money. Taxpayers in the United States and NATO countries are only taxpayers in NATO countries and the United States. They have no idea what they pay for, because let's go back to the beginning of our briefing. The media in these countries did not tell them about it. They distorted the picture. In other words, Ukraine is Zelensky's. Yes, it's just a way to repay Ukrainians with their lives. Then the bonuses, the money, the services he gets, and the whole gang. At the same time, he was on Bankova, and then... Some of these funds, and a large part, are being refunded. The right hands of those in the West who are satisfied with all this and patronize all this are due to the right account. Today, we have talked about the practice of Ukrainian embassies abroad recruiting mercenaries in 3 countries. Here, we draw attention to media reports that Ukrainian embassies in some countries are openly campaigning for citizen seats. Join the so-called International Legion of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. At the same time, the host country authorities turn a blind eye to this practice, or even encourage it at all. I would like to draw the attention of these countries and their leaders. Can you imagine that if other countries recruit mercenaries to participate in conflicts, your country will be involved in them? What do you think? This development of events. In this regard, I would like to recall that most countries in the world are parties to the additional protocol to the Geneva Conventions of 1949, under which mercenaries are not entitled to the status of commanders or prisoners of war. Some Western countries, and indeed Ukraine itself, have ratified or signed the 1989 International Convention against the recruitment, use, financing, and training of mercenaries, which obliges participants. Criminalize relevant behaviors and actively crack down on them. In addition, these countries are parties to the Convention on the Rights and Obligations of Neutral Powers and Individuals in the event of land war of 1907. According to this document, military units and recruitment agencies cannot be established in the territory of a neutral power, which calls itself a country, to support belligerents.
Военные отряды и открываться учреждения для вербовки.
As for Ukraine's own actions, it is clear that the recruitment of mercenaries is beyond the normal functions of diplomatic missions. I would like to recall that according to the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, the protection of the interests of the activating state in the host state must be exercised by direct invoking within the limits permitted by international law. In addition, the staff of diplomatic missions are obliged to respect the laws of the host country, including the rules. As far as we know, most Western countries have adopted criminal law prohibiting mercenaries. However, the latter ignored them, ignored their own legislation, and encouraged Ukrainian embassies to engage in illegal activities on their own territory. By the way, another example is not even hypocrisy. This is not even a double standard. This is the most false agenda, the most false agenda. Every day, a statement about our country comes from Berlin saying that we are suffering economic failure, that we have no prospects for future economic development, and so on.
Что у нас нет перспектив для экономического будущего, развития и так далее. Вот посмотрите, прошло
Look, it has been 2 years since the German authorities announced how they formulated the changes of the times and embarked on the road of strategic failure for our country. During this period, the German side has reduced all channels of bilateral interaction, which is a matter of special pride. For some reason, the Scholz government has completely abandoned our country's energy resources. Well, that's what they say. According to the German leadership, these measures should bleed our country. Let's look at the results. Yes, of course, the Western, first and foremost German media, are painting a completely different picture. This is the same example of what they do in the context of children's themes. In general, the situation around Russia. So, let's look at the situation from a perspective. Facts and figures. The material is based on statistical documents, by the way, not only our, but also international. Russia today is the 5th largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. What is the situation in Germany itself, which is about to bring us strategic failure, including in the economic field? Because they decided to punish us, they didn't say why, but we know the history. There's always a desire to punish us for something. As a result, official data suggests that the German economy is in a growing systemic crisis. Germany's Federal Ministry of Economy and Climate Protection confirmed that direct losses in the past 2 years amounted to about 160 billion euros. This is not the 160 billion euros that someone illegally owns in Germany. Seized, taken or stolen by freezing them. No. This is what the German government is doing. Lost from her reckless, illegal actions, including mainly our country. Experts put the figure at 400 billion euros, and Germany's capital outflow abroad exceeded 250 billion euros in 20 years and 23 years. He has moved production to 3 countries. It is in full swing in Germany, the only industrialized developed country, to record a recession in 23 years. The IMF's forecast for this year. Overall, it was disappointing for Germany. GDP growth will not exceed. Clothing as high as 210%. Germany's leading companies have made no secret of their plans to reduce the number of workers at their factories in the coming years. It is suitable for this kind of population development, economic development, and even the development of industry and the population of Germany. Not suitable. It's up to them to decide. The only thing that matters to us is to tell the truth. Take the opportunity. The mass media is not to spread lies, nor is it to repeat the slogan that Russia should be punished endlessly. Take advantage of these opportunities of German news agencies, media, and communications. By the way, the mass media and information active in Germany and the United States are to inform the German people of the real situation in Germany. In my opinion, this is the first thing that German citizens should worry about. Unfriendly countries have not stopped trying to artificially limit the spread of Russian in the world. Recently, Latvian authorities decided to abandon the teaching of Russian as a foreign language in schools. According to the Ministry of Education and Science of Latvia, more than half of secondary education institutions choose Russian as their second foreign language. According to statistics, they don't want to. More than 40% of the Russian population uses this opportunity to communicate every day. In this regard, we believe that such actions by the Latvian authorities are not only a serious belittling of the meaning of the Russian language. and everything related to Russia, but most importantly, as a vivid manifestation of chauvinism. Progressive. Discriminatory attitudes towards our compatriots on the basis of language and ethnicity. Such a policy is a direct violation of basic human rights. Of course, this includes the right to speak, culture, traditions, and historical memory of the mother tongue. All of this is enshrined in numerous international documents, declarations, and decisions that Latvia considers itself a party to. It is worth noting that the so-called democratic institutions in Europe have not found the strength to condemn or comment in some way on these shameful practices. But have they become the norm in fascist countries? Cruel Russophobic persecution persecutes children in schools and kindergartens, persecutes journalists, and replaces historical facts. We are convinced that excluding the teaching of Russian not only limits the ability of our citizens to learn Russian, but also deprives them of access to Russian documents. History is part of the world cultural heritage and part of world civilization. Therefore, the initiator of the heinous anti-Russian movement. They themselves will suffer from such policies because they are actually force. They are doing everything they can to degenerate their society. In this regard, in our country has a great responsibility to save for the promotion of Russian abroad. The Russian Federation will respond resolutely to all attacks on the Russian language and will continue to pay special attention to protecting the rights and interests of compatriots, expanding online learning, and ensuring that expatriates and foreigners who maintain interest in Russian language and Russian culture can access domestic educational digital resources.